And now it's a little past 9 p.m. here in Seoul, and while it is still early in the count, the first trends are beginning to emerge from today's local elections, and those early results are already offering clues about voter sentiment and the broader political landscape. To help us make sense of what we're seeing so far, we're joined in the studio by Choi Hyun Jin, Professor of Political Science at Kyung Hee University. A very big welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the numbers first, Professor. So voter turnout, it appears to be rising from the previous local elections, and also it followed a record early voter turnout, of course. So what does today's turnout tell us about voter sentiment?
Yes, we had a 61% voter turnout. It's quite high for local election. And also it is almost more than 10 percentage point higher than the previous local election. And also it came after a record high early voting rate of 23.5%. I think this shows a very high level of people's interest and also political engagement. And also looking at the result of exit poll, it appears that this high turnout rate worked more in favor of the Democratic Party, the ruling party. So many voters seem to have used this election to give their support to the new Lee Jae-myung administration and also give President Lee an opportunity to move forward with his agenda. At the same time, this result at the exit poll may also show some disappointment with the opposition, the People Power Party. So I think today's turnout shows both support for the new administration and also warning message to the opposition.
Right, so a whopping 61% as of now. It's quite big. And so what can this large, high turnout actually say about the actual results?
Yes, whenever there's some increasing, voting turnout, both parties, claim that this high turnout helped them, right? So, for example, Democratic Party argues that the high turnout shows that more voters came to support the government, while the opposition party argues that the people want to check the government, right? But however, what matters is not just how many people voted, okay? What is more important is, who voted and also where they voted. And therefore, only using the single turnout rate, it's very difficult to predict the outcome. For example, if a turnout rate is especially high among voters in their 30, 40, and 50, it is a good sign and it may be more favorable to the Democratic Party. But however, if the turnout rate is higher among young generation, for example, in their 20s, and also older people over 60, it could be a good sign for the People Power Party. So regional patterns also matter. Take the Seoul, for example. If there's high turnout rate in conservative districts such as Gangnam, maybe it could be more favorable to their sitting mayor Oh Se-hoon. But if the turnout rate is higher in other parts of the city, it could be good for the challenger Jung Won-woo. So, what the key question is not how many people voted. It is the key question is which party did a better job of bringing their supporters to the voting booths.
Right. So higher turnout doesn't necessarily point out to a particular political direction we're seeing. Now we have moved from voting to counting at this hour. Were there any early results that caught your attention tonight, Professor?
Yes. So it's too early to predict the final outcome, but only look at the result of the exit poll. So what stands out to me is the overall picture. So the exit polls show that the Democratic Party is leading in many parts of the country. So it is ahead in 11 out of the 17 governor and mayor races, while the People Power Party is leading only in one province, that is Gyeongbuk. And several other provinces, like 5 races, remain very close. Okay. What I find especially interesting is that the Democratic Party is not only doing well in its traditional strongholds such as Jeolla province, but it is also doing very well, leading or competing strongly in places such as Seoul, Busan, Ulsan, and Gangwon. So because Busan, Ulsan, and Gangwon are typically considered as a so-called swing province in South Korean politics, but this Democratic Party is now leading or competing strongly in those areas as well. So another result that caught my attention is Daegu. So Daegu is one of the strongest conservative strongholds in South Korean politics. In my memory, I never saw the conservative candidate lost in Daegu in the past. But the exit poll shows that the race is very close. Okay, it's too close to call between Chu Kyung-ho and Kim Bu-kyum right now. So this is a big change. So if these exit poll results are confirmed based on this assumption, so tonight may be remembered as more than just a victory for one party. I think it may suggest that some traditional regional voting patterns are becoming weaker than in the past.
Right, so it could be a sign of a lot of changes from traditional,
Yes.
what we've been seeing in the past. So like you've said, you've mentioned some regional changes. Could you elaborate for us a little bit more? Are there any races or regions that could end up having outsized political significance once the votes are all counted?
Yes, I would point three places. Of course, the first one is Seoul. So Seoul is the capital city, and also Seoul is always considered the most important political battleground between the two rival political parties. And also it has the second largest number of voters next to Gyeonggi province. And the result in Seoul is often seen as the outcome of the national mood. Okay? And also, if the Democratic Party, wins Seoul, many people will see this result as a strong signal of support for the new administration. And also, in the past, generally, the winner of the Seoul mayor election tend to be considered as a strong candidate for the next presidential election as well. And also, secondly, Daegu, as I said earlier, for a long time, Daegu has been one of the strongest conservative region in South Korea. But the exit poll now shows that there is a very close race in Daegu. If voting patterns begin to change, even in Daegu for the first time, that could be one of the most important political stories of tonight, I think. And third, Busan. The Busan is the second largest city in South Korea and has long been considered as also some conservative city in South Korean politics. But the race there is also very close. So although it's hard to predict the final outcome, but even this competition, the close race in the city of Busan is another sign that the regional political patterns may be changing in South Korea. So I would watch Seoul, Daegu, and Busan very carefully. And the result in those three places may tell us more about the future direction of South Korean politics than other areas.
Right, so the results in those three areas would ultimately help shape the narrative of tonight. Now, many people have been saying this is the first nationwide election since the Lee administration took office. To what extent do you think this could be seen as an assessment of this first year of the Lee administration?
Yes, I think many voters in South Korea saw this local election not just as a local election. So I think it was the first nationwide election since the beginning of the Lee Jae-myung administration just about 1 year ago. And many voters are using this election to express their view on the incumbent government and also the opposition party. So if the exit polls are confirmed, the many voters seem to have given President Lee and also his new government some positive early report card. So there has been some achievement made by President Lee. For example, the recent surge in Korean stock market. The recently we witnessed a record high number of so-called Kospi index. And also there has been some successful stories of South Korean semiconductor industry. And also there has been some tough negotiation with the Donald Trump administration to make a trade deal. So based on this exit poll result, it seems to me that some voters give some positive evaluation of this achievement made by this new administration. But there may be another message as well. So it seems to me that many voters appear unhappy with the opposition party. There's Conservative People Power Party. So in general, tonight's result may be seen not only as a support for the President Lee Jae-myung, but also as a warning sign to the Conservative Party. So this election is not only about the future of President Lee, may also about the future of conservatism in South Korea.
Right, so it does really send a message to both parties right now. But when we look beyond just winners and losers of this elections, what do you think would be the broader political significance of the results coming in tonight?
Yes, I think today's result, although it's hard to predict final outcome, but the exit poll result suggests that there's important implication about the current balance of power in South Korean politics. The Democratic Party appears to be winning not only in its traditional strongholds such as Jeolla province, but also in several other key battlefield regions, so-called swing areas. So at the same time, the results also suggest that the Conservative Party is facing a serious challenge. So many voters seem unhappy with the PPP, and many people feel that the party has not shown enough change since the impeachment of the former President Yoon Suk-yeol. So the bigger question is now not only what this means for President Lee's government, okay, but the bigger question is what happens to the conservative camp in South Korean politics. So can PPP change and rebuild the political trust and attract more voters in the future? And then maybe one of the most important political stories to watch in the years ahead. And also the second implication of this election is polarization. So the this election process reminds us that the political division within South Korea still remain a major challenge for us. So there's a regional voting patterns. There's still regional voting patterns in South Korea, but today there's a political divisions are shaped by age, generation, gender, and ideology. So in other words, the people are somehow polarized into two rival camps. So in many ways, the political South Korean politics has become more polarized than the simple regional divide of the past. And therefore, the bigger story tonight may not simply who won and who lost. So the bigger question is whether South Korean political parties can regain its political trust, and also how can they build broader support across different groups of voters.
Indeed. So this implications could extend well beyond just this election cycle. Now, finally, so as we are waiting for the results to come out, Professor, what will you be watching most closely over the next couple of hours?
Tonight, I'll be watching the close races. So in the governor and mayor races, I will focus on places such as Daegu, Busan, Chungbuk, Chungnam, Jeonbuk, and Gyeongnam, okay, where the margins are still very small, okay, between candidates. So these races will help us understand whether the exit polls accurately predict the actual outcome. So I will also paying attention to the by-election for the National Assembly. So there has been some very interesting two by-election campaign. One race that stands out is Busan Bukgap, where independent candidate Han Dong-hoon is running strongly against the Democratic candidate Ha Jung-woo. And that race could become a very important implication for the future of the conservative camp, because the independent candidate Han Dong-hoon is the former head of the PPP party. And another important race is Pyeongtaek-eul in Gyeonggi province, where three candidates, Kim Yong-nam, Yoo Hee-dong, and Jo Guk, are competing very closely. It's really impossible to predict the outcome in this district. The result there may tell us something about the future shape of opposition politics. So over the next few hours and night, I will be looking at who wins, but also how close these races are in these so-called swing areas. Sometimes the margin can tell us as much as the winner.
Right, definitely. So we'll be certainly watching for how these results would continue to unfold in the coming hours. But as for now, thank you so much for your insights tonight, Professor Choi.
Thank you very much.